What supplements may support thyroid function? When does fatigue become a concern? Why are women more prone to thyroid issues? All that and more on this episode of the Healthiest You. 1 in 8 women will have a thyroid issue in their lifetime. The butterfly-shaped gland in your neck is responsible for producing hormones that affect your metabolism, heart rate, digestion, mood, and more. When your thyroid is out of whack, it can lead to different health problems. We are focusing on women's health and wellness on the Healthiest You podcast. Whether you're on your way to work or enjoying a cup of coffee, take this time to focus on your health. Here to talk about thyroid issues is Dr. Andrew Brackbill, endocrinologist with Lehigh Valley Health Network, part of Jefferson Health. Dr. Brackbill, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So the thyroid is a small but mighty gland affecting every cell and organ in your body. What is the main function of the thyroid and some common problems that you see?
I tell people it controls metabolism. So sort of how fast and slow your body does everything it does. So it impacts everything that your body does. There's nothing that's excluded, but it does tend to pop up in some aspects more than others. So we do commonly hear from our patients that they feel the speeding up or slowing down of their metabolism in their body temperature, their weight, their mood, their appetite, how frequently they're moving their bowels. And the severity of those things would all depend on the degree of the abnormality. But the primary issues that we see would be disorders of too much or too little thyroid hormone, the hormone that the thyroid gland makes. And then there's a variety of different tumors that can arise in the thyroid gland. And those tumors can sometimes be benign, most commonly, and then sometimes they're cancer, which can be a whole other bag of worms.
Yeah. Now, we know that women are 5 to 8 times more likely than men to have a thyroid issue. So why are women more prone to having a thyroid problem?
Oh, well, there's not going to be a definite answer to that question. There's a number of different theories tossed out there. Probably the one I've seen most commonly put forward is that it's a reflection of the higher estrogen levels themselves that women have. Something to do with the way that that higher level impacts the growth and development of the thyroid. It's how the body reacts to it in terms of infection fighting and inflammation. There's probably some connection to things like pregnancy and delivery. Definitely thyroid hormone levels, thyroid function changes during pregnancy. Definitely after delivery, it's very common for new thyroid problems to start. So that's probably connected as well. But it's one of those situations where for every study you can find that says there is a connection, there's another study that says that's not necessarily the case. So it's definitely not something where we have an open and shut answer. But there are many theories put forward, and it's probably a combination of all the above. I've even seen some people talking about differences in the way that growing babies affect their mother's thyroid glands and leave behind permanent changes. I've seen people talking about the differences in the way that the X chromosomes are activated versus deactivated as we're growing inside of our own moms. So, I mean, the theories are, there's a wide variety of different theories as to why women are more affected than men, but nothing that rises to the level of being proof. Nothing that I could put forward and say, oh, this is the thing that does it. But it's more likely complex. It's more likely a combination of a variety of factors. And that's why the studies aren't so clear cut. That's why they're not open and shut. Is because if you try to isolate to just one thing, it isn't just that one thing. It's a whole bunch of things added together that affect that susceptibility.
Well, that was a great answer. And I appreciate you shedding some light on that because,
Sure.
There are so many different things that can impact it.
Oh, and you'll find that if you look online with even a question as simple as this, you'll find from different folks different answers because they're focusing on different things that strike a chord with them particularly. So you'll find that the psychotherapist says, oh, it's stress. And here's the studies that show that it's stress that causes your thyroid to work improperly. And then you'll talk to the nutritionist and they'll say, no, it's iodine. It's a matter of how much iodine you get in your diet. And then they'll say at the very bottom of the webpage, buy my book with the cookbook that shows you exactly what to eat and what not to eat to fix your thyroid problems. So when anybody tells you, when it comes to thyroid disease, when anybody tells you that they have the answer, watch out for the sell is my advice. Watch out for what they're trying to get you to buy from them.
That's a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
It's misleading because they're trying to reel you in and probably get you to buy a product that you may not even need.
And it's not that there's no evidence.
Right.
You can pull evidence of a whole lot of different things. You can find evidence in scientific studies to support a wide variety of opinions. But proof, that's a different question. There's very little proof that any of those things is the thing. That's why I say it's more likely a conglomeration of multiple factors and not something you can just simply put your finger on and say, oh, I'll do this, and this will be the effect.
Now, many women accept being tired all the time and living off caffeine as normal, even though there may be an underlying health reason. At what point does fatigue become a concern?
The kinds of questions that you might be faced with when your doctor asks you, how bad is this, would be things like falling asleep at inappropriate times. So if you just happen to sit down during a calm moment of your day, do you just nod off during the middle of the day? Things like, are you nodding off at all while you're driving, which would be a particularly bad situation. Things like waking up feeling rested, the hours of sleep that you're getting at night. But I don't have something that I could say, oh, this is the cutoff where you would go from this is not a big deal to suddenly this is, unless it was something obvious like falling asleep while driving.
Right. I feel like that's a common occurrence for some people is waking up after you get like a 7 to 8 hours night of rest, but you're still tired.
Yeah.
But it could be something with your thyroid, but it could not be.
Oh, yeah. I'm faced with this question, I would say half a dozen times every day in the office. In fact, I'd say that's probably one of the most, that and why can't I lose weight are probably the two most common questions I face in the office from people seeing me for thyroid disease. So this presents a very difficult question for doctors. Truth be told, I actually hear the same sorts of concerns from my patients with normal thyroid hormone levels, high thyroid hormone levels, and low thyroid hormone levels. And they don't usually tell me they feel much better when I treat them properly. So even when I restore their levels to normal, many of them tell me they still struggle with the same kinds of weight and fatigue issues. And the jury is out on what that means. And it's not for lack of trying to find the answer. In studies of people who had had thyroid surgeries, they found that before thyroid surgery, they had normal thyroid hormone levels. Perhaps they were doing their surgery for a tumor of some kind. After thyroid surgery, they were able to treat them with thyroid hormone to produce exactly the same test results, normal hormone levels that are exactly the same as before the surgery. And yet they say they feel tired. I mean, we don't know why. We don't know why. A number of different things have been tried. There have been several experiments. Could there be something unique about some people's enzymes that don't handle thyroid hormone the same way? But if you try supplementing to compensate for that, it doesn't work. In studies, what they found was if they tested a bunch of normal, healthy people who said that they felt well, asked them a bunch of questions about thyroid disease, and then found that inevitably a certain percentage of them had low thyroid hormone levels. They went ahead and treated those people, made their levels normal. Everybody got a pill, but the people who were normal just got sugar pills. The people who had low thyroid hormone levels, they got thyroid hormone. 2 months later, their levels are all the same. They're all normal. They asked them the same questions. They still all feel the same. But then they tell the people who had low thyroid hormone levels, oh, by the way, 2 months ago when we tested you the first time, you had low thyroid hormone levels. And guess what they say?
What?
They say, we did feel tired. So something about the knowledge that there's a problem, knowing in your head that you have a disease that makes you feel tired, makes you feel tired.
Interesting.
So the question then becomes, where does the brain connection to physiology, where does that thinking end and the actual problem begin? And it's not always obvious. So as the person who's handling the hormone level of things, if I have a very accurate test saying hormone levels are normal, and someone says, oh, I still feel tired, then unfortunately, I'm sort of left holding the bag with, well, I don't know why that would be when we fixed the problem as best we can. But maybe there is something that we're missing. I can't deny those patients who had thyroid surgery who still have, they have the same test results they did before surgery. Something changed, but was it learning that they had a problem? Was it making them have a problem that caused that feeling? I don't know. And there's not really a way to figure that out.
So you're saying it's that awareness of knowing, hey, I have a problem, and now it's almost kind of making me think,
maybe
I'm tired.
I mean, there's some studies that seem to point to that.
A unique perspective.
So it makes it difficult for us because, like I said, I'm getting faced with this question all the time. And to have to tell people, well, I don't think it's because we're doing something wrong with your thyroid, leaves everyone dissatisfied. I want my patients to feel better, of course. They would love to have me tell them, oh, well, take this pill and I'll solve your problems. But unfortunately, it generally doesn't work like that. So yeah, fatigue is a really tough one. I'll often tell my patients that it could be some other kind of hormone condition. Commonly, they've been tested for all the common ones. I'll consider things that are rare, but they're rare. And then, of course, the elephant in the room would be things that aren't easily tested. I mean, who's to say it's not something to do with their sleep? Well, I don't have a way of measuring that, not with a blood test anyway. Who's to say it's not something to do with their mood? So it is a source of ongoing frustration. And that's why it's led to so many scientific studies. It's not just me. The endocrinology community as a whole would love to stop people from feeling so tired.
Of course. Fatigue can come from so many different things.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what makes it so challenged when diagnosing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are some other symptoms that may be a sign of a thyroid problem?
If it's something that's affecting the size or shape of the thyroid, you could potentially feel a change in your neck. I actually very commonly get people referred to me about thyroid concerns discovered as part of a swallowing issue. Thyroid concerns don't usually cause swallowing issues, but it does lead to an evaluation that commonly finds a thyroid problem. Thyroid problems are very common after all. So I wouldn't actually say it commonly causes the thyroid commonly causes swallowing problems, but I would say that if you feel a lumpy, bumpy feeling in the front of your neck, generally closer to your clavicles than most people expect, it's not usually as high as most people are feeling things.
Okay.
Then that would suggest potentially an issue. Thyroid tumors and thyroid cancer commonly produce no symptoms at all. So if you do feel a bumpiness, then that's a reason to have something like a thyroid ultrasound done.
What about temperature intolerances?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it depends on the severity of the condition. Very mild thyroid conditions often are asymptomatic, completely asymptomatic. And even severe ones can actually be asymptomatic. It's not at all unusual for people to have very high or even very low thyroid hormone levels and say they feel well. So it often impacts people less than they think it will. But with increased thyroid hormone, a faster metabolism, people will usually feel warmer. Whereas with a lower metabolism, they'll usually feel cooler in a persistent kind of a way, not as episodic as it might be with other conditions.
So two of the common conditions are hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. What are the differences between the two?
Classically described, hypothyroidism will be more of the slowing of metabolism from low thyroid hormone levels, such that you feel colder, tireder, sadder, and find it easier to gain weight. In more severe cases, you might notice things like joint aches or muscle weakness, perhaps dry skin, or even sometimes hair thinning. In very severe cases, it actually can be life-threatening. You can get so cold and become so fluid-filled that you can actually die. That's unusual. You can actually die. With high thyroid hormone levels, it's just kind of generally the opposite. Things are sped up, so you feel generally warmer. You usually lose weight without trying. You feel more energized, classically, not always, but classically. You may be shaky. You may be anxious, find it difficult to sleep. Your heart may race. Things like palpitations and fast heartbeats are not at all unusual. So, again, rarely, I've seen this a few times, but not every day. You will die from high thyroid hormone levels as well. Although there, it's commonly mixed in with some kind of precipitating event. And that's why I bring up car accidents. If you get into a car accident and fly through your windshield, if you already have high thyroid hormone levels on top of that, well, things may not go well for you. Yeah, because now you're not just facing the same kind of car accident that anybody might have. You have very high thyroid hormone levels on top of that, and that can be life-threatening.
How are both of these conditions diagnosed?
If it's a really clear-cut case,
Mm-hmm.
you might actually diagnose higher low thyroid hormone levels without blood tests. But in general, you're always going to use blood tests to diagnose this because they're very easily accessed. They're very accurate. You can actually get a thyroid hormone level blood test from HNL, the Health Network's lab, without a doctor's order. You just buy it online and then go have your blood drawn for, I believe it's $20. So it's not at all difficult to simply do a very accurate thyroid hormone level. The most accurate test is actually not a thyroid hormone level. It's a pituitary hormone called TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone. And it's called that because it controls the thyroid gland. So it's actually the most accurate test. It's extremely sensitive. It overreacts to the situation. So it tends to make problems look a lot worse than they really are in some cases. But it's because of that it's so accurate, it's so sensitive that in general, that will always be the first thing that we reach for.
Now, let's say you find out that you have either hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism. How do each of these disorders start to impact someone's everyday life?
Well, it's going to depend on how bad it is. There's a wide range of degrees of severity that could come into play. For somebody who's having trouble focusing on things, I mean, that could make work very difficult. But the kinds of things that people come to me most frequently to ask about do fall into those kinds of concerns we've already talked about. So tiredness, energy problems, weight gain are the two most common things by far. Again, how much they respond to fixing the problem, if there is one, is not always satisfying to people. And then changes in the neck itself. So things that you feel here, perhaps they bother you. Generally, they don't. So it does really depend on how big of a problem you're talking about. In the most severe problems with thyroid tumors, you might see things like trouble breathing and trouble swallowing developing over a matter of days. And those patients will generally go to the emergency room. Obviously a problem,
Right.
not usually something they ask me about. And when it comes to the hormone levels, it is pretty individual. Even though I said classically with high thyroid hormone levels, people will feel more energized, more awake, a lot of people feel more tired. It doesn't always fit the mold. So these kinds of changes in metabolism, increased and decreased, I would say for every patient I have who says that high thyroid hormone levels make them feel more energized, there's another patient who says it makes them feel more tired.
Every person is so different,
Mm-hmm.
and the symptoms can actually overlap between the two.
Oh, easily. To a surprising degree.
Now, what about Hashimoto's disease? How does this condition affect your health?
About 100 years ago, there was a Japanese guy named Hashimoto, who in Germany at the time, looked at the thyroid glands of people who had died with low thyroid hormone levels. And lo and behold, he said, well, shoot, there's a whole bunch of infection-fighting cells in here. There's a lot of inflammation. Maybe that's why they're having low thyroid hormone levels. And the name stuck. So basically, Hashimoto's it's simply saying there's inflammation happening in your thyroid gland. That's all that means. It doesn't have anything to do with thyroid hormone levels until it produces so much damage from the inflammation that the levels become typically low. High levels are possible, but generally short-lived. So classically, you would describe that as a low thyroid hormone problem once the damage had progressed enough that the thyroid couldn't keep up with the body's needs.
What is the connection between Hashimoto's disease and hypothyroidism?
Well, Hashimoto's is the most common cause, at least in civilized countries like the United States. In iodine deficient areas of the world, it might be low iodine levels. But in the United States and other first world countries, you're going to see Hashimoto's because for some reason we get more autoimmune disease. So infection fighting cells, our own body's infection fighting systems, for some reason, identifying the thyroid gland as the bad guy and trying to kill it. So it fills with infection fighting cells. They do the damage they're designed to do. And you end up with, usually over many years, low thyroid hormone levels. And it progresses so slowly that the American Thyroid Association, actually in their guidelines, they say, when you have Hashimoto's, you really only need to check thyroid hormone levels once a year. It progresses so slowly that you don't generally need checked more often than that.
So we've been talking about hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism, and Hashimoto's. How might having one of these conditions impact fertility?
So there is a little controversy here. Mildly high and mildly low levels of thyroid hormone probably don't have much impact. But some people do believe, and I might be one of them, that even slightly low thyroid hormone levels do impact fertility, decrease fertility. Severely high or severely low generally will. Not high as much as low, but yes, they generally will. But even slightly low thyroid hormone levels do seem to impact fertility in my patients. I've seen too many people where just giving them a little bit of thyroid hormone and getting their levels just a touch higher seems to do the trick. But that isn't backed up well in studies. So there's some controversy there, how intimately that's involved. Once they're pregnant, thyroid hormone levels definitely change. And people with pre-existing conditions need to see their doctor about that. But in general, most thyroid problems get better in pregnancy.
They get better.
They usually get better.
Oh, that's good news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For some reason, autoimmune conditions, probably because the infection fighting system is designed to calm down when you're pregnant. You don't want your infection fighting system fighting the baby. So that would obviously be pretty bad. So that's designed to calm down. So that might also calm down other things it's doing that it really shouldn't be doing, like attacking your thyroid.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'd say if someone has been trying to become pregnant for a matter of probably at least several months, and they haven't had a thyroid test, it's not a bad idea to test. Thyroid disease is very common, but it's not going to be causing most fertility issues, but it is a very common thing, and it's very easily treated, and I have seen it work.
Well, thank you for expanding upon that, because I think that's a big question for a lot of women who have a thyroid issue. Immediately, they're thinking about fertility, if that's, the phase of life that they're in or planning to be in the coming years. So,
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sure.
Now, because of overlapping symptoms, another question women may be asking, is it menopause or is it my thyroid? So the opposite spectrum.
Yeah, so a lot of the symptoms of these two conditions will overlap. Many women undergoing menopause will say that they get the weight gain, sort of a mental fogginess kind of a feeling. They'll often get joint aches. The combination of one of those kinds of things with hot flashes, though, would not be as typical for thyroid disease because, again, thyroid hormone levels will be high or they'll be low, but they won't be both at the same time. So you won't generally talk to somebody who's saying, oh, I'm feeling tired and gaining weight, and I'm getting hot flashes. You wouldn't expect that. So pathognomonic, number one symptom would be hot flashes and sweats for menopause. So if you're not getting those, it's less likely to be that. But of course, there's premenopause when symptoms are milder. So it's not always easy to pick apart. Menopause is one of those things where until it's done, you really can't diagnose it very well. Sure, you can do hormone levels, but they fluctuate so much, you can never really feel certain until it's done with. And you can have symptoms for many years before the final period. So it is often tough to pick apart. Thankfully, we do have very accurate blood tests. They're not all very accurate, but we do have some that are very accurate. So if those are pointing toward normal levels and you do still have symptoms that could be from menopause, then yeah, that is the elephant in the room.
Aside from hormonal health, how does diet affect the thyroid? Are there foods you should eat regularly and ones that you should avoid?
So the short answer is no. So the American Thyroid Association guidelines say there is no specific diet recommendation for high or low thyroid hormone level prevention or treatment. Now, those are American Thyroid Association guidelines. In America, things like iodine deficiency are exceptionally rare. In other parts of the world, that would not be the case. So sub-Saharan Africa, central China, you might worry quite a bit about your patient having enough iodine in their diet. Here in the United States, that's basically not unless, because we have iodine added to our salt, most people get roughly double what they need every day. And unless you're intentionally avoiding prepared foods, you're probably getting a lot of iodine. So yes, you need that for normal thyroid hormone level. It just isn't something that I bother talking to my patients about, because unless they're vegan and literally only eating fresh fruits and vegetables 100% of the time, they're fine. So I have tested people for low iodine levels occasionally. I've never actually had an abnormality arise. So it's something that, it feels silly to ignore because it is so critical, but I basically ignore it. It's just not realistic in our society. You can find studies that would connect thyroid disease to things like gluten intake.
Yes, I've heard that.
But those studies don't arise to a level that we would call proof. And that's one of the problems. So if you see me in the endocrinology office, I'm going to say, no, there's no diet recommendation that I have to give you. But my next sentence is going to be, but if you Google this, you'll find a lot of diet recommendations, and a lot of them will have scientific references that you can look up and read for yourself. But what you'll find is that a lot of them don't have sufficient numbers of patients or track them for a sufficient length of time, or test the kinds of things that actually prove that what they're doing is doing the right thing. So unfortunately, it's that way with a lot of dietary aspects too. Should you be avoiding certain flours? Should you be adding more iodine? Iodine is something I would say in general you should not be adding more of.
Okay.
If you're using iodized salt, I would not tell my patients you need to add more. If you're drinking lots of iodine drops you're getting from Amazon, you should stop. That's not good for you.
Not a good supplement
It's
option.
not a good idea.
Okay.
Your body can handle a lot of things, but if there's underlying thyroid disease in particular that might be so mild you're not aware of it yet, taking iodine can trigger it. So I wouldn't do that.
That's good to know, because I think that's something that you see a lot of advertisements for is take these iodine drops.
I wouldn't.
Don't do it. Okay. As far as weight gain or loss, as we already kind of touched on, the thyroid is often blamed as the reason. What is the connection?
Well, slowing your metabolism with hypothyroidism generally does promote weight gain. I see this in patients all the time, both yesterday and today. I had patients who had high thyroid hormone levels. We treated them in the last couple of years, and both of them told me they had gained significant weight since they were treated. And I said, well, of course you did. We slowed your metabolism. That was on purpose. You came to us with a high thyroid hormone level. We fixed it. Your metabolism slowed down, so you gained weight. That's normal. That's what's going to happen. So if your metabolism slows down for any reason, that's going to promote weight gain. That isn't necessarily a side effect in terms of the treatment that we had engaged in for high thyroid hormone levels. Giving people treatment and bringing their metabolism down to normal, that's not a mistake. That was on purpose. With hypothyroidism, slowing someone down slower than normal, sure, that promotes weight gain. Unfortunately, fixing it does not really promote weight loss. In studies of people who had very low thyroid hormone levels, when doctors fixed it, people lost a few pounds. Yeah.
That's disappointing.
It's not that easy.
So then I'm interested to see what you say about this question. How can weight issues be addressed if you do have a thyroid problem?
Well, if you have a thyroid problem, it certainly, you do want to keep your levels normal if you can.
Right.
You definitely wouldn't advise that you pursue high levels to try to lose weight, even if that might be possible. And low levels do promote weight gain, so you don't want to let that happen for no reason. But since adjusting thyroid hormone levels doesn't usually produce the kind of loss that people want, I usually tell people that they're stuck with trying to lose weight like everybody else. So unfortunately, that means cutting calories, which you might not be able to see on camera, but I'm not very good at. In terms of where I point people, usually I point them to the bariatric clinic. Once you get in there, they've got a number of different ways that they can attack this problem, be that dietary changes, and they even have a variety of different options that they offer, medical therapies, which are more and more effective all the time, and even weight loss surgery, which they wouldn't do there, but they would refer you to the surgery service.
What's your favorite snack? I saw your excitement over junk food there.
Oh boy. Well, last night I found some Toblerone bars on my desk.
Oh, and, no. Those are good.
Unavoidable. Something about hazelnut plus chocolate lights my fire.
I'm anything with chocolate for me. Chocolate and peanut butter.
Oh, chocolate and mint.
Oh, that's
there,
really good
I'm
too.
sold.
Mint chocolate chip ice cream. We know how bad stress is for our overall health, but how detrimental is stress to your thyroid?
Well, so there's a connection. There's a connection between thyroid function and stress for sure. If you check thyroid hormone levels in people down the street in the ICU, they're going to be all kinds of weird. Being critically ill is a well-recognized cause of very unusual thyroid hormone changes. So it's not something that I would say we have figured out to the extent that I could tell you exactly how stress changes things, but stress of the physical kind, so again, getting into car accidents, getting an infection, those kinds of things will certainly have an impact on thyroid hormone in a variety of ways. It's very complex. Emotional and psychological stress, it's hard to say. We don't have enough proof that I could tell you that we've got that figured out. I would say that I'm completely open to the idea that those kinds of things are a part of thyroid problems, but I couldn't tell you exactly how much. It's just, we don't really know. That kind of thing is tough to judge.
If you are someone that is very stressed, though, most of the time, what are your tips for managing that stress?
I would say that I try not to let myself eat when I'm more stressed. I like to read in general, and I also tinker on things. But I don't have a recipe for this is how you do it. That's not a question I face very often.
Okay. Yeah, everyone kind of has their own thing that they go to for stress relief, whether that's working out, reading.
Working out I don't do.
Oh, no. Should you admit that?
It's obvious.
But do you park far out on the lot at least?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Okay, so there you go. You get some steps.
Thank you.
Some
I appreciate
movement.
that.
Now, if you have a thyroid condition, how can your mental health be impacted? We've talked a lot about all the physical problems that can come with having a thyroid issue, but what about that mental health aspect?
That one's tough because we know that the thyroid hormone changes that people go through will have an impact on their levels of anxiety, their levels of depression, and their energy levels, things like fatigue, their ability to focus on things and perform tasks. But knowing you have a disease also has an impact, and where exactly that line falls can be tricky. But in general, I would say that many of my patients with thyroid problems of any kind, any stripe, will tell me that they feel tired. And I commonly hear both anxiety and depression, no matter what the thyroid disease is. Again, It's something people have made this connection for themselves. It's so common. Half my patients will say, oh, my family member says this is why they feel so down all the time. Or my neighbor says that's why they're so anxious they can't sleep at night. So it's hard to say for sure exactly where the thyroid problems begin and end. And our expectations take over. But yeah, I mean, there definitely is an impact. It's just, it's generally less than people want it to be. I'll say that too. A lot of my patients, they'll still have they'll say, I'll ask them questions like, how much did changing your thyroid dose, your pill dose, affect how you feel? I would say 9 out of 10 times they say it didn't make a difference.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I asked that question on purpose because I want them to realize that that's not what it was. I want them to think, oh, that really didn't help, because the implication I'm trying to make is there's something else wrong. And if that's a mood problem, well, those aren't exactly rare. And figuring those out might not be easy. Again, you're not going to do a blood test to figure that out, but it's possible to improve those things.
And at that point, then you'd probably refer them to like behavioral health.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Living with a chronic condition like the ones that we've covered today, we know is challenging. So what are some wellness strategies that can help women feel better emotionally, physically, and socially?
The kinds of things that I'm hearing from my patients, in general, most of them are not related to the thyroid. So again, you may find that if you look online, you can find, or even down at the grocery store, in the pharmacy section, you can find all kinds of things marketed to people to treat their thyroid problems.
Yes, tons of options. Thyroid this, thyroid that.
Now, and maybe this is selection bias, so maybe I'm not seeing the people who do benefit from those things. They're coming to me because it didn't work, but it doesn't work for my patients. I'll tell you right now, those kinds of things, they're not helping my patients. The kinds of supplements that are marketed to these people, they're not working. Again, maybe that's why they're coming to me. But yeah, I've got plenty of patients who are telling me that they're trying these kinds of things without benefit. Now, again, I have had some patients tell me that they did a gluten-free diet, or they tried a lactose-free diet or an elimination diet, or they went keto. I'm not going to say that those things are crazy or wrong. If they feel better, hooray. I'm the first to congratulate them. But is that because they've done something to affect their thyroid? No, generally not. I would say the patients who tell me that they feel the most difference, the patients who really come to me and say, thank you, Dr. Brackbill, you really helped me, are the patients I refer for weight loss surgery. Those patients come back and give me a hug because they feel so much better. And they thank me for referring them to lose significant weight.
So what treatment options do you recommend for hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, and Hashimoto's disease?
Well, Hashimoto's disease is an easy one. There's no accepted treatment. As far as we know, there's nothing outside of experimental treatments that would ever be beneficial for Hashimoto's. They have actually done studies of doing surgery for Hashimoto's. It turns out that some people do feel better when you just get rid of it.
Surgery.
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds pretty extreme to me.
Yeah.
But there really isn't great evidence that anything we do is going to impact the course of that disease. So beware of people who tell you, oh, well, you should be tracking your antibody levels. This, that, or the other will make your antibody levels go up or down. As far as we know, there's no impact on the level of antibodies on a test and how quickly the disease progresses. It's either high or it's low. It's either normal or it's high. So it's not a matter of how high. It's high, so you've got this. So that one's easy. Treating hypothyroidism is, in a sense, easy as well, because if you don't have enough thyroid hormone, we give you thyroid hormone. And we have thyroid hormone that is exactly the same as what the human body naturally makes. There's different thyroid hormones in the body. There's a handful of them, not just one or two. And we don't supplement all of them because it turns out that if we only give the one then the body will self-regulate and produce all the others in the amounts that it needs. We don't have to give each and every one, thankfully. And the one that we give is a very slow-going and easy-to-use, cheaply made medicine. Some years, it's the most prescribed medicine in the United States. So low thyroid hormone levels is actually the number 10 reason people see a doctor. So it's an extremely common pill. You hear people talk about it as being levothyroxine, the generic name, or Synthroid is a common brand name, Tyrosint, Levoxyl, or others, Unithroid. And the beauty of that medicine is that when we give it to people and get the dose right, their hormone tests will all be normal. The vast majority of the time, all normal, whether we're testing the common hormone levels or the uncommon ones, because the body will automatically regulate the other hormones that aren't being given. Now, you can get a variety of other thyroid hormones. You can get more, how should I put this? Active thyroid hormone. The version that we usually give people it's not the active form. Now, you can still take enough of it to sort of force your body to be more, to increase your metabolism. But in general, because the body is regulating that on its own, as long as the dose is right, you're just going to have a normal metabolism. But if you take enough of the active thyroid hormone, which is sold as liothyronine or Cytomel when it's in its pure form, but it can also be extracted from animals and is available as things like NP thyroid, Armour thyroid. Because those contain so much of the active thyroid hormone, you're basically taking a stimulant. Just like any other stimulant, you can make yourself feel more awake. You can make yourself lose a little bit of weight. But the problem with taking a stimulant is, number one, you're taking a stimulant. So it's probably not good for you to take something like that for instance, the rest of your life. And it's tougher to regulate. The hormone levels that the active thyroid hormone produce fluctuate so much more that our measurements of it become a lot trickier to understand. When you have a Synthroid or levothyroxine pill that you're taking, it makes the levels basically the same morning, noon, and night. They change very little. But when you take active thyroid hormone, liothyronine, Cytomel, or Armour, the levels change from hour to hour. And unless you time your blood test just right, you could be fooled into thinking that there's something going well or not going well. And again, we really don't know how safe those are to take long term. There's been studies, but they're all real short.
Well, thank you for explaining all those different options. Going back to Hashimoto's, so I know you had said that there is no treatment. What do you recommend then? Like management techniques or anything?
There's really nothing that can be done. It's an autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
So just like Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, you don't just change your diet and make it better. I mean, it'd be nice if it worked that way. I have lots of patients who wish it worked that way. But as far as we know, there's no good evidence that it does. So, I mean, there may be some autoimmune diseases like celiac, gluten sensitivity, that do really revolve around the things that you eat. But as far as we know, it doesn't work that way for Hashimoto's.
It's disappointing to hear that. It'd be nice if we could get a cookbook and, just
those cookbooks exist.
They do.
They surely do.
They are all over the internet. And it's great if it helps at least one person to some degree, but it's not maybe the cure-all for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if it helps you to feel better to, take a particular thing that's recommended by some online guru, fantastic. It's unlikely to be harmful to take a B12 supplement. But is that necessary? Well, I don't know. And that's I don't have the proof to tell you this is what you need to do. So some people believe they do, and maybe they're right. I don't agree. I don't know. Until I have proof, I'm not going to tell you that I know.
Now, how often should you have a thyroid panel done? We've talked a lot about the different treatment options, but when it comes to having that thyroid panel done, is that something we do yearly?
If you have Hashimoto's, you should have it done yearly, yes. If you're on any type of therapy, I would say definitely at least once a year, depending on how things are going, how stable are things. But in somebody who's otherwise healthy and feels well, usually every few years, I think is what most primary doctors are doing. In somebody who becomes pregnant, a little controversy here, but generally people are checking a thyroid hormone level as soon as you become pregnant. Generally, shortly after pregnancy, I think it's a good idea to check a thyroid hormone level. Again, just in sort of people who are well, a lot of primary doctors will just check them every year. Again, thyroid hormone disease, it's so common that it's never really wrong to check. And again, so many people feel the same kinds of symptoms that thyroid disease produces that doctors are rarely begging for a reason to check a thyroid hormone level.
Can you break down for our listeners what is shown in a thyroid panel?
There's a variety of different thyroid panels out there. The one that I think I mentioned earlier that you can get, you can order your own thyroid panel over at HNL Health Network's labs for, again, it's like $20, $25. There you'll get a TSH, a thyroid stimulating hormone. And if that's abnormal, you'll get a thyroid hormone level, a T4 level. T4 free is an actual thyroid hormone. T4 is a thyroid hormone. T3 is another thyroid hormone that can be tested, but is less accurate. Now, you might think, oh, well, if I want to know if I have a high or low thyroid hormone level, I want to check the more accurate of the two, the T4 test. But you'd be wrong. The most accurate test is the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone. For a variety of reasons I won't go into, although this has been thoroughly studied, the TSH test is so sensitive. It reacts so strongly to even the slightest of changes that with very rare exception, that is the test that I will do first. So the one that's $20, $25 at H&L, that's the one that I generally do on my patients day in, day out. And it isn't always the fastest to change. So there's certain situations in which it might lag behind. And there are sometimes reasons to do, especially if the pituitary gland in the brain that makes TSH, if that's believed to be abnormal, then you might have to rely on the less accurate T4 or T3 tests. But in general, those tests are so much less accurate, I generally don't do them.
Well, that was very helpful. But what do you think about at-home tests? There's a lot of ads out there for a variety of companies that target thyroid health. Here, get your panel done and you get results within 2 days.
Yeah. And some of those may actually be quite accurate. I know from experience that home hemoglobin A1C tests for diabetes are actually pretty good. But it doesn't make sense. In my mind, it doesn't make sense to do a test like that if I can go to H&L down the road and literally just pay online with a credit card and have a well-qualified lab who does a good job do the best test there is for me at the drop of a hat. I mean, I could go order my test online from my phone right now, have it drawn when we're done, and I'd have a result this afternoon.
That's amazing. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, why bother with the home? I looked up some home tests. They tend to cost about $100. Why would you do that?
Yeah. I think it's those ads. They just draw people in. But
They're
if
smart.
you have, an H&L right down the street from you, why not just do that? And then you can look at it very closely with your physician.
Some of them might involve panels of other tests. So panel is such a non-specific word. I mean, there might be a lot of other things in there that would make that $100 worthwhile, but not if you're just checking your thyroid. You really only need the TSH test. That's a very accurate test.
Okay, TSH test. All right. To wrap up today's episode, what tips do you have for staying ahead of your health? And is there anything women can do to prevent having thyroid issues?
Sadly, no.
Ugh.
There isn't anything you can do.
That's not the answer we were hoping for, Dr. Brackbill.
I'm sorry. But unfortunately, the most common thyroid conditions are out of your hands, whether they're autoimmune or genetically caused or due to things like radiation from the rocks, the sun, the trees. These things are really out of our hands. A lot of things probably do contribute to thyroid disease. Studies showing connections to, like I mentioned earlier, estrogen levels. I already brought up iodine, brought up radiation, viruses, things like giving birth. So there's a number of things that probably have an impact, but those aren't things that you're going to do away with out of fear. in general, the kinds of things that people are already doing to watch their health are probably the kinds of things that are helpful. But again, I don't have great proof for every study that says you could benefit from this, there's another study that says, no, you don't.
Hmm.
It's just not that simple. I would love to tell my patients, oh, well, this is what you do and you won't have that. It just doesn't work like that. It's not that simple.
But you can work side by side with them to find something that will work for them.
Oh, yeah. The kinds of things that really bother my patients most, many of them are hormone conditions. Not all of them are easily diagnosed and treated. We talked about menopause earlier. I mean, a lot of women with menopause feel much better when they take estrogen, but there's so many side effects they don't want to. So then what do? Well, none of the other treatments work as well. So you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, it's frustrating
Oh,
as a woman. Like, you're like, there should be some answer, but it's not clear cut.
No. With thyroid disease in particular, unfortunately, it is kind of a matter of the luck of the draw to a large degree. Obvious things like making sure you don't have low iodine levels is kind of silly in the United States. If we were having this discussion in sub-Saharan Africa, I would say, oh yeah, that's a big deal. But here, no, it just isn't. And there really isn't much else that you can do. I do think that seeing a primary doctor regularly, letting your doctor know if you become pregnant, those would certainly be ways that you could be vigilant for problems, because they're going to be checking these things almost always to some degree. But otherwise, no, it's not really something that we can control.
Well, Dr. Brackbill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
This has been great. We've learned so much information. Really appreciate you being here.
Oh, sure. I get these questions all the time.
To learn more health tips, visit lvhn.org/healthyyou. Remember to leave us a review, subscribe, or follow the Healthiest You wherever you get your podcast so you never miss an episode. And remember, be safe, be smart, and be the healthiest you.